You know how I literally just made a video about not to travel when you have a toddler and a baby? Well, oops. We went to Chongqing. So, Chongqing has been making the rounds in social media as this viral tourist destination for I don't know why, because it has some hills. A lot of the marketing is rather clickbaity, I think. And one misleading thing that I kept hearing about Chongqing is that it's the largest city you've never heard of, or even that it's the largest city in the world. So is it? Probably not. The largest city in the world that most of the English-speaking world has not heard of is probably something like Karachi. But what about Chongqing? Doesn't Chongqing has a population of 32 million people? No, not really. Maybe technically. See, the way the border of cities is defined, it's different from country to country. In China, basically, if the government decide that, if you're an important city, you get to absorb smaller cities around you. You know how, like in the US, there are counties that have multiple smaller cities? It's kind of like that. So some cities in China, if you're not big enough, you may refer to them, colloquially as cities, but they're not legally cities. Like they're not like a municipality or like an incorporated city or some legal jargon that you might have heard of before. So when it comes to Chongqing, when people say Chongqing is the biggest city in the world with a population of 32 million people, they're talking about the specific definition of Chongqing that is the size of 100 New York City. So they're kind of right in a sense. It is the largest city, probably geographically, but most of this land isn't the part of the Chongqing city, and it's not urban. The urban part, as defined by census, by some definition, is still, twice as large as New York City and has a population of 12 million people, which is kind of very reasonable. Like all in all, it's just another major city in East Asia. That aside, was it cool to visit? Yes. Go check it out. As far as major cities go, it was pretty cool and it was pretty affordable. We were able to get a family room at the heart of the city for just over $100 a night. The city core itself is actually pretty compact. And if you're, young and don't have small children, you can probably walk to most of the attractions within just a few kilometers. The subway system was great, as is the case for most Chinese cities. We mostly just stuck to the more Chinese-y tourist attractions instead of the, viral social media spots because, well, we have family and that's what my mom wants to do, and we're Chinese, so we're interested in Chinese attractions. So for Chongqing, these attractions are Shancheng Gudao, which is a hillside old town with your boutique cafes and bookstores. It was pretty chill. And there was Shibati, which means like 18 staircases, which was another a larger hillside marketplace with more restaurants and shops and random historic buildings. We also went to the zoo because Annie wants to see pandas and red pandas. And of course, the only place that had both and is also accessible by subway was the Chongqing Zoo. So that's where we went. More on why subway accessibility is important later. By the way, there were also old bomb shelters scattered throughout the city because Chongqing was the wartime capital of China during World War II. It was actually also the wartime capital for the Korean government in exile in World War II. So if you're into history, there are plenty to see, like modern history. There are plenty to see in Chongqing. But overall, there weren't too many super old buildings as you would see in some other Chinese cities, because Chongqing was essentially a small town until Western colonial powers built a river port there in the late 1800s. Sure, people have lived there for thousands of years, but the cultural center of the area, meaning the Sichuan Basin, is, wait for it, Chengdu. After Chongqing, we took the high-speed train to Chengdu, which took exactly 1 hour and 2 minutes. Chengdu, at least the part that we stayed in, was a bit ritzier, but still reasonable, at least compared to other Chinese cities like Shanghai and Beijing. We stayed near Taikuli, which was perhaps the fanciest neighborhood, which was a fancy outdoor shopping mall in the center of the city, built around an ancient Buddhist temple. It's all very 21st century China. You'll see attractions such as the Louis Vuitton store, or the Gucci store, or the Apple store, or the big screen with the panda. Chengdu, of course, is where the Panda Conservatory is located, but we chose not to go because my daughter would literally throw up after even a 5-minute ride in a cab or a bus, and the Panda Conservatory was not reachable by subway. So a prerequisite for us to travel with 2 kids are cities where traveling by subway is convenient because of the motion sickness problem with them. And it was also easier because that's what we're used to in Hong Kong. Another thing Chengdu is known for is its ginkgo trees, which we didn't know beforehand, but we kind of caught the beginning of it. But maybe we were lucky that we weren't there when it peaks, because the tourist sites were already packed. And if you're Chinese, you probably know this phrase, and you will see this phrase a lot when you're in Chengdu. Chengdu man sheng huo, which means Chengdu is for living slowly. Not if you go to the popular areas. Check out this 1,000-year-old tea house at People's Park. That's where you're supposed to go and learn how to relax like the locals. And it was just a random weekend, not even during a holiday, mind you. And it was raining too, but it was still absolutely packed. It was closer to what you would expect at the Oktoberfest in Munich, maybe, than a relaxing outdoor cafe next to a pond. But maybe it's just a state of mind. If you are a true local, maybe you'll learn to live slowly anyway. We also went to this kind of old industrial area called Dongjiao Jiyi, or in English, the memory of the eastern countryside. It's basically an area with a bunch of old, big concrete factories that have been renovated as music venues and art galleries, and of course, shops and restaurants and bars. It's mostly like a cool date spot for younger couples. But there was this one place that was worth the trip for us. It was this dress-up immersive theater dinner show thing, kind of like a Renaissance fair, where you can rent clothes and go to a well-produced dinner show with period-appropriate song and dance, etc. We didn't go to the show, of course, because we have small children, and the show was somewhat serious. But Kate and Annie did do the dress up, and we took some photos, which ended up to be probably the highlight of the whole trip. And it was not the only place that did this, of course. There was also a place like that near Wenshu Yuan, which was the main old Buddhist temple in the city. That was like over 1,000 years old. But we didn't do that one. We did go to the temple, which had this Buddhist library in the back outside the main compound, which don't miss it if you're there, because I think that's actually the coolest building of the whole group of buildings. All in all, it was an 8-day trip, and it went like travel day, 3 days in Chongqing, and then travel day, and then 3 days in Chengdu, and then travel day back. For both cities, we just did 2 days of activities, and then 1 day of just staying around the hotel and doing a bit of shopping and relaxing. And that's kind of what it was like for us when we travel with kids. The malls, again, were a great sanctuary from the busy streets and activities. And most cities in China have a few of those, the new malls, ritzy malls near the city center. And Even if you can't afford to shop at most of the stores, these malls tend to have lots of space and clean bathrooms and nursing rooms and stuff for kids to do for free. And kind of family-friendly sit-down restaurants compared to most tourist areas, which are mostly cramped with street food that are not necessarily that good even. So how was the trip? It was terrible. Why didn't I have fun? Yes, but the whole time in the back of my mind was that our house was being flooded by gray water with bits of kitchen grease from every apartment above us for 4 days. We got the call because the flood water was spilling out into the hallway. It took us 2 whole days just to mop the floor dry, and we're still dealing with the damages of the furnitures and the doors to this day. So until next time something really bad happens, my name is Yu Yun, and thank you for watching.